Alright, let's talk about the Faroe Islands. What can you do in this country? There are so many things to do actually. I just wanted to tell you about 10 things that came straight to my mind. First up, you have to go hiking. There are a crazy amount of hiking trails on the Faroe Islands. Whether you want to go up the highest mountain, the highest peak, or whether you just want to take it slow, there are many options for you. You can hike by yourself, or you can also go with a guide. There's really something for everybody, and as you can imagine, the landscape is just amazing. I also recommend checking out Torshavn, which is the capital of the Faroe Islands. This is not where you will land by plane. You will land on Vagar Island, but Torshavn is usually the first stop of many visitors, and for good reason. There are many things to do in the city itself. There's a very lively food scene. There are many little churches. They have two beautiful colorful ports which make for great pictures. You can also just have a stroll through the city center, and it's a great place to start and plan your future adventures on the Faroe Islands. There's great Wi-Fi, there are restaurants, there's really everything you would wish for in a capital, but it's also tiny, so don't worry about any crowded places or anything like that. Still very quaint and very beautiful. If you're visiting, you have to take a scenic drive. You can rent cars in the capital, Torshavn, or at the airport, and some hostels also have some special deals for car hire. If you have your car, take it on some of these gnarly roads, go through the underwater tunnel, take it on the ferry even. There's loads to explore on the Faroe Islands, and some of these roads are single track, so be careful when driving, take it slow, but enjoy the views. You're not gonna regret having a car on the Faroe Islands, especially also because getting around with public transport is very difficult. The landscape is beautiful, but there are also some amazing animals to see, and there are loads of special birds to spot. So if you're into that, make sure to head to Mykonos Island. There are ferries every other day, I think, to get out to that island, and you will find the very special puffin birds that only live in these Nordic regions. They are beautiful creatures, and if you go on the lighthouse hike, you will definitely see them on the cliffs. They look a bit like parrots, but just special and very different. You gotta check it out while you're on the islands. Now, we've talked about Torshavn, but obviously there are many other little towns and cities to check out on the Faroe Islands. They are what make this place really special. Sometimes there are just small settlements, these stone-built houses with colorful walls and grass on their roofs, just like you would imagine, straight out of a movie, straight out of a Viking movie, you could say. These little villages can be very remote, so hard to get to. What comes to mind is Gjögg, Jörnavik, Gassadalur, and many others, but it's worth the drive because these are just special places. You will feel like you're at the end of the world, stepping back in time. You gotta at least visit some of these villages. I also recommend you to visit a waterfall on your road trip. That's easy to include in your trip. They are just near these villages I was talking about. Just for example, there's one of the most beautiful ones very close to Gassadalur, which is also close to the airport, and there's also Fossa, which is probably the biggest waterfall and most impressive on the Faroe Islands, and that's really up to Iceland standards. So if you have been to Iceland and you've been very impressed by their waterfalls, go check out Fossa. This is such an impressive thing to see. There are 2 levels to the waterfall, and it's just magnificent. On the Faroe Islands it's basically 10 degrees Celsius all year round, so it's never too cold but also never very hot. I dare you to go for a swim at Jörnavik village. They have a beautiful sandy beach. Obviously the water is freezing because we're talking about Arctic water. We're not too far away from Iceland, we're not too far away from Scotland, so the water is gonna be cold. But it's worth the experience. Just have warm clothes ready when you get back out, take some nice pictures and bring the memories back home. If it happens to be a very rainy day and the weather is just poor, I recommend you to visit the National Museum of the Faroe Islands. It's very close to Torshavn. They have an indoor section with some old Viking boats, and you can learn more about the culture of the place. And there's also an outdoor part to the museum which is included in your admission price. There you will find old traditional houses and just find out how the people used to live. By visiting that museum you will get a good idea about the past life on the Faroe Islands, but I also urge you to talk to one of the locals, because as you can imagine, living on the Faroe Islands is quite special. The population isn't big, so in most villages they all know each other. Sometimes it's hard to meet new people, especially also for young people, and many actually move away to Denmark to pursue their careers. I definitely recommend you to talk to one of the locals. It's just very enriching and it will give you a deeper understanding of the Faroe Islands. Finally, I have a very special tip for you. Take a ride on one of the local helicopters. These aren't as expensive as in other countries, because many places on the Faroe Islands are so remote, it's hard to get to them by ferry or by bus. So the public transport system has made helicopter flights very affordable, mainly for locals, but that doesn't mean that tourists can't just book a flight. So for example, I booked a flight from the capital Torshavn to the airport Vagar Island, and I think it was about 40 euros, so definitely very affordable. It was only a 20-minute flight, I think, but you get beautiful views and you really see the whole country from a new perspective as well. I do have to warn you though, the weather can sometimes get bad and stormy, so they have to cancel the helicopter flights. Just don't plan a flight in as your main way of transportation to get to the airport at the end of your trip and you end up missing your flight. Just plan it in the middle of your trip as a fun thing to do and take the bus back, for example. That's what I did. So these were 10 things you could do on the Faroe Islands. Of course, there's lots more to do, as you can imagine. If you want to know more about the Faroe Islands, I recommend you to watch my vlog series I filmed last summer in the country, where I take you along for the journey step by step. It was a 2-week trip, amazing experience. I linked the series in the description. Thank you very much for watching today, and I'll see you next time.